First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who supported our trip to Grenada. And, however you contributed, whether it was through financial support, donations, or prayers, we very much appreciate it. This past week and a half was very eventful. On the Wednesday before we left, I spoke for the very first time, and Sunday I spoke for the second time in a foreign country with a translator. I only noticed one person falling asleep while I was speaking, so I guess I did okay. And he was the bus driver, so I excused him because he had Parker and Jackson sitting behind him, rattling his nerves, so he deserved a nap. When arriving at worship service, you would usually be greeted with God bless you, which I can't remember how to say that, and a hug and a kiss on the cheek. And you had to be prepared at all times at the worship service because you never knew when they would call on you to do something. I would hear a bunch of gibberish, and then I would hear Tim. And I would think, uh-oh, they want me to do something. These other guys didn't have a problem with that, but I prefer to have a little notice, or at least ask them before the service to do something. The singing was wonderful. You recognize most of the songs, the tunes, but trying to sing them were difficult at first, if you kind of catch on. Announcements they would do at the end of the service were extremely lengthy, and sometimes I felt as if they lasted as long as the service. One thing I liked was at the end of the service, they would announce the visitors and announce their names, and they'd have them stand up, and then all the members would welcome. But overall, the worship service was the same as the way we worship God here. Our daily schedule involved get up and have breakfast and take a bus ride to the church building. Health classes were given by our medical team, and those attending were given valuable information concerning their health and nutrition. This year we had a little different. We had a question and answer session. It went really well. They were eager to ask questions, and sometimes they gave their medical team advice. Eyeglasses were distributed at this time, which were very popular. It seemed like they were in very much need of eyeglasses, and as well as toothbrushes. Pass those out. After the health classes, our children classes began. Children classes consisted of Bible stories, songs, skits, and crafts. The last day, the children enjoyed having their feet washed and receiving flip-flops. Those of us who didn't participate in the classes went out and visited homes. I would have to estimate, we visited over 100 homes, I would guess. The visits consisted of passing out flyers. We had these flyers printed out, which invited them to church and classes. And we passed out Bibles, dresses, flip-flops. We visited members' houses, and we also had Bible studies. Of all the visiting I was involved with, we were only rejected one time that I can remember. All the times we went out, and I just wonder, if we visited 100 homes here in Chattanooga, how many times we would be rejected. You receive different reactions when you tell someone you're going to Nicaragua. You may be asked, why do you want to go to a place that is so hot? Yes, it is extremely hot. Good. And people ask, aren't you concerned for your safety? And yes, I'm always concerned for my safety of where I go. As David said this morning, never really felt threatened in any way while driving, other than traffic. But other than that, I think I'd feel safer walking through Grenada than I would Chattanooga. While we were there, Rhonda and I received an award. One night they called us holding hands. So they crowned us Mr. and Mrs. Nicaragua. And I told them, I said, if you were only together a couple of days a year, you'd be holding hands too. I learned a few things in Nicaragua. I learned how to work the crowd. Craig's mom, she's really hilarious. And she arrived in front of me one morning in services, and she started walking through, and she went to each person, spoke to each person, shook hands, and she turned around and she said, "That's how you work the crowd." And sit down. I thought that was really funny. I learned that there are other stressed moms in the world besides my wife. Not mentioning any names. Another thing I learned was between all the women, we had enough medication to supply a North Korean army. Everyone had a bag this big of medication, which when you carry that much, you don't need it, but if we didn't, we would need it. But we feel very blessed to have been able to go to Grenada again, and we thank everyone's support.
Hey, Lynn. Hey, Lynn. Turn this one up. Okay. I'm the voice in the skies, so I can do the slides for y'all. Now, I just had a couple of ones I wanted to show you. The Bible studies that Tim's mentioning were really, it's impressive that people want to talk to you, and it's impressive the type of people that will talk to you. We walked up on these guys on Monday morning, and there was about 8 or 9 guys standing around kind of hooting and hollering, and usually that's a red flag of stay away. But we walked by them and just said hello, and then they seemed friendly, so we told them we wanted to invite them to church. And the guy there in the shorts standing next to Craig, his name's Silvio, he immediately stepped forward and said he was wanting to change his life. And our translator, Angel, said he's drunk. And it made sense, all of them hanging out there about 9:30 in the morning. And we talked to him, and I told him if we came back the next day and he wasn't drunk, we'd have a Bible study. And for somebody who's drunk, which you get a lot of mixed reactions, but he had a really sincere look in his eye. And we came back the next day, and he was sober as far as we could tell. And we had a study with him, and the guy sitting there looking at you in the red shirt, his name is Isaac, and studied real briefly with the two of them, but talked about steps to overcome alcoholism and how they can't expect to overcome that hanging out with the friends that are encouraging them to do that, and hit them really hard about the church being a support mechanism to be there for them as they try to stop drinking. And they both admitted all the trouble in their lives that drinking had caused, and seemed very sincere. That was on Tuesday. Very sincere again about wanting to change their lives. On Wednesday, we swung by again and talked with them. They seemed excited to see us, and we're there. He was there. The tall guy there, his name's Silvio. He was at church with another friend of his Wednesday night. And I thought that was just an amazing first step. And part of what we were teaching was how anyone can be saved. The gospel's for all, not just for... we talked to him about people you think you might see at church, and yet God sent his son for everybody, not just the ones you might expect to already be there. And then another study we had with this girl, and we never asked, but her right arm looked like she had suffered polio or some debilitating, something had affected her arm. But her name was Denise, and we had a really good study with her. Nathan Bowman led that study, and he had some books from his preacher in Alabama that were in Spanish and English, and she spoke some English, and so he was able to go through by pointing to the place in the book where he was reading in English and she was reading in Spanish pretty well. And then Angel Crouch down there was translating, and he would elaborate on some points because he's been on hundreds or maybe thousands of studies. So, we just had really good studies with people, and it's always refreshing to see people willing to sit and study the Bible. I'll hand it over to Craig.
I got the task of talking about first impressions, since this is my first trip to Nicaragua. Chris, you didn't mention about the chair breaking. So the whole time I'm worried about I'm a pretty big fella, and after Nick, it just completely demolished a chair. I was worried about breaking a chair myself, and that honor went to Chris.
It's hot. This chair is milk.
I escaped without breaking any of the chairs. Here's the deal, though. See, I figured this out. It's so hot in this church building. Sunday morning was when I preached, and I was worried for the guy coming up after me because I had left a puddle on the ground. The sweat was just dripping off of me like crazy. I did not realize it was going to be that humid and that hot. And I guess, we are so conditioned to sitting here in these nice padded pews with the air conditioning, and you get out of that environment and you really take it for granted. And I know this intellectually, I realize that, but I just didn't realize the largeness of that, I guess is the best way I can describe it. So Sunday morning I'm giving the lesson, and Dave is standing here translating for me. And I say something, and David doesn't quite get it. So he looks at me and in Spanish asks me what I had just said. And the funny thing is my lesson was on being lost in translation. So he's asking me in Spanish to reiterate what I had just said, and David, I don't speak Spanish, so that was pretty funny. First impressions. I had the opportunity to kind of sit back and observe some of the interactions between the members there in Nicaragua and us coming in as Christians that I would say probably coming from an established church that has a strong leadership team, we are an established church. And comparing it to the first century churches, it was interesting to watch some of the interactions that were taking place. And if I were to try to wrap this up in a nutshell, I would probably have to tell you that our leadership being there and setting an example is extremely important for this church. They need encouragement. They have issues. All churches have issues. But when you have some of the personality types that are strong-willed that they have there, and you have some of the issues that they have struggled with and faced, I can very much see how a church that does not have the level of maturity that this congregation has would need to have that really strong encouragement. And so I would say that what we can do as a congregation is to keep them in our prayers. Pray for their unity. Pray for their continued success. they are devoted. They have their hearts in the right place. Jose, he's a hard worker. I got the opportunity to watch him interact and walk around and do some of the Bible studies with him. And he wants to bring people to Christ, but they need our encouragement. And I don't know if that's something we can do as a whole. Send letters, we can write them in English. They've got people there that can translate it. Just, I think, them knowing that we are behind them and that we support them and that we are going to be there for them, I think would be well received by them. Talk a little bit about Shirley and my mom. As the mature team members, I gotta tell you, I was humbled and just blown away by they're amazing. I knew Mom was a little bit cuckoo anyway, so she doesn't know when to say no and stop and realize, but they were both just, they were ready to go at a moment's notice. When I got the opportunity to watch Shirley do one of the skits with the kids, and her part was the lions in Daniel the Lion's Den. And let me tell you, she ran out there with this stuffed lion, and she was getting after these kids. She was roaring, and that lion was attacking the kids, and she had the whole place just laughing. So that type of energy level, you expect to see that with some of the younger generations, but it was so refreshing and heartwarming for me to see her doing that and just not giving an inch to anybody. I mean, she was right on it. What an example that is for me to see that, for all of us to see that taking place. One of the things that stuck out in my mind this time was Sunday evening, the 17 of us. There's a room off to the side of the hotel lobby it was Sunday night, wasn't it, David, that we had the service? So the 17 of us went in there and held our worship, and we spoke from the Bible. We talked to each other from the Bible. We sang some songs that we knew by heart, one of them being the second verse of It Is Well With My Soul. And that's why I wanted to lead that song tonight. And having that type of service meant a lot to me because it reminded me of probably what it might have been like for the first century Christians, smaller groups in a very intimate, close setting that made me really feel closer to the team. And that's something that you don't expect, and it's just one of those added bonuses of being a part of something like this. And you all make that possible. If each and every one of you could be a part of that, it would be such a wonderful thing. And then the caveat to top it all off. I'm going to try not to go emotional. When you get the opportunity to baptize your child, hallelujah.
Amen.
And Kaylee and Haley they got an award too. The Soul Sisters was their award for the time. But just what an incredible experience to be able to do that and baptize your child in Christ, and to do it in that type of setting really was such a wonderful way to start the whole trip. And it, from that point, it didn't matter what happened. I mean, it was a success. We came back with two sisters in Christ added to us. And, I tell you what, some of you know I'm terrified to fly, but if those are the results we get, man, I'll get on an airplane 100 times and do that time and time again if that's what's waiting on the other side of it. So thank you. Appreciate y'all's support very much.
great picture. I did like that one with Shirley, too. That was her first time on a motorcycle. So watch out, Chattanooga. This was the second trip that Central sent people to Nicaragua. We sent several from the Student Center on a variety of trips. Springtime, large group went to Panama. Did very important work there. There's some still in Peru, and Central has a hand in some of them going. And then there were 10 of us that went to Grenada just a few weeks before this past trip we're talking about now. And 17 went on this last one. Just looking at those two trips, 27 people straight from Central out of a congregation that has an average attendance of about 160, is that right, Art? Somewhere there, ballpark figure. I think that's great. It speaks well of who we are as a people and the care and the love that we have for reaching out. I have to say thank you that she's not here tonight, but to Edith Head, because those little dresses that she made, hilltop dresses that several pitched in on last year, and she knew we were going this year, and she just started making them. And I'm thinking there was probably about 100 that we passed out that she personally made. And you saw some of the homes that we stopped at. Just a picture of the slats that kind of cracked